Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burnettwork. Welcome to Positive Fandom. I am your host, Mmmm, and tonight we have with us, of course, Julian Mushkin. Julian, how are you tonight?
I'm doing really good. How about yourself, RM?
I am doing well. And I have to say, Julian, you and I have been reviewing so many of these fantastic episodes for all mankind. And certainly, episode 5 for season 4 is no exception to this. What a fantastic episode, Julian. What did you think?
Well, it certainly it answered some questions that we'd been asking for a while about the dispositions of some people, and finally, got to brass tacks about how people were feeling and true feelings between others. So I think this was pretty good. There were some developments that I thought were maybe a little far-fetched, but given how they have this season really been trying to stress how almost mundane the space travel is starting to become, where you have people going and staying on the moon at hotels and things like that, which is just, I think that's crazy. But be that as it may, we'll get to that other stuff in a little bit. But I'm enjoying the show, so still having a good time.
Yeah, Julian, and you and I have talked about this in our reviews about the normalization, at least it's what we've been calling it, of space travel. And there's actually a line in the episode, I'm kind of jumping around, but there is a line where somebody does say this, and I think it's Kelly, who, of course, we know as the mother of the space baby, but also the adopted daughter of Ed and Karen. I think it's Karen. And, she says, quote, in the episode, space travel has become safe, routine. And I'm thinking to myself, has it? Is it safe? Is it routine? Is it, Julian, safe and routine with
No, no, it is not. we see evidence. We saw evidence last week. We took a day trip to look for rocks out on Mars and almost died. And we saw some things happen in this one concerning a certain wayward young man who was exiled. And so certainly, no, that is the problem. They're taking this all much too easily. They're not on the ball thinking about how dangerous this stuff is.
Yeah, and certainly it's some of the most dangerous stuff in the world,
it's
Julian,
gonna
right?
bite them in the butt. Yeah.
And I also want to say hello to Tom Jr. Jackson, a moderator, collaborator, and good friend. Certainly a huge part of the Burnettwork family. Tom Jr. Jackson, we are all good people, and it's wonderful to see you here tonight. Thank you so much, Tom, for everything that you do. And Julian, it's really funny. I have a picture of Kelly who's up here on the screen, and she's been through a lot, and we do see a lot of different themes in this particular episode. And I was going to say, honestly, this kind of theme of motherhood or abandoned mother or not having a mother seems to be revisited in this one, where Kelly is crying for missing Karen. And at first I thought for sure she was going to stay on Earth and not.
I did too.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, and then I thought maybe she's going to reach out to her birth mother, since Karen has unfortunately been killed in such a tragic way. Maybe she's going to reach out to them again. You remember she seemed to show some interest at some point, wanting to find them. And I thought this might be very interesting for her, going forward. That might be a possibility. I even wondered whether, she was going to have a better relationship with her mother-in-law. The mother-in-law has been very good about this. This has been very hard on the mother-in-law as well, losing her son this way, in such a tragic way. And then, kind of being there for Kelly, almost not just as a mother-in-law, but a surrogate mother, perhaps even, and as a mother for her son at times. So the mother-in-law has been going above and beyond this call of duty with her grandchild. So we're seeing something very interesting. And I'm not going to go too far because I don't want to be an Ed basher here. I'm not going to do that. But Julian, it feels like, it may not be entirely true, but it feels like Ed can't deal with this all right now. You know, he lost Karen and now he's been up there, and it's been a way for him to kind of not maybe deal with the loss of Karen, you know, and maybe seeing Kelly and seeing his grandson keeps, you know, reiterating the loss of Karen. You know, what do you think? Do you think that, you know, in addition to Ed's other problems, do you think Karen's loss has actually kept him from Earth as well?
No, I think you're right there. In addition to his physical infirmities that he's feeling, he is definitely running away from his grief. I mean, regardless of the fact that, you know, they were divorced and they were not a couple anymore, but there certainly was a bond, a connection between them, and certainly, you know, how they both still cared for Kelly. So there was that connection there too. And then he finally finds, you know, kind of a little bit of a connection with, you know, the Russian female pilot, and then she has to go away. So that's pulled from him too. And I think he's like, all he's got left now is this frickin' mission. The problem is, I mean, that's what he's holding on to. The problem is he knows he shouldn't be doing it, but he's kind of in a denial on that. And so when we get to that big conflict later on in this episode, you know, it's really hard, and it's gonna cause some issues. Seriously.
And certainly, you know, like these, I'm calling it a close quarter mission, because there really isn't any place for these guys to go. You know, they're in each other's space. They have to deal with things. I mean, they even allude to the notion of how they look at one another, of course, as a form of communication. I loved how they took the time to show Ed looking at Danielle in some of the flashback scenes, which you knew I totally loved, Julian, which we're going to talk about in a second. But I think that the looks that these guys are giving speaks to one another, speaks volumes in a lot of cases, where no one has to say anything. We know what they're thinking at so many critical points in the show, and it reverberates so well. Maybe some of the best nuanced looks I've seen in a show, where they really don't have to talk. You know something's wrong. Like, you just know something is up. Someone is not happy with the way things are going. And, you know, they almost feel, I guess, in some cases, helpless to do anything. But we did see kind of a breakthrough in the latest show when it comes to someone who wants to do something or step up. But before we get to that point, I did want to share, I'm not going to necessarily read the whole article because they have some nice shots that I wanted to show, but this particular reviewer talks about how the recap is who's the boss. And I kind of like laughed at that because, you know, Daniel Poole kind of being there, and she certainly does assert her authority. But boy, Julian, it seems like Ed's done a lot to assert her in front of the other mission specialists, let's say. And it's uncomfortable. And, you know, everybody's kind of looking around thinking, you know, we didn't sign up for this. Like, nobody wants to see this. You know, why? When did Ed like stop caring about, let's say, what people thought about? You know, he's got a real KMA attitude, doesn't he?
You know, especially in regards to Danielle, as much as they have that bond from being on Jamestown together for so long, he has always been, he's a product of an older time, and he's always been patronizing towards her in many respects. And I think with, it was one thing when they were racing for Mars and they were kind of co-leads of their respective groups. But now that he is subordinate to her, he does not like it at all. And he's letting it show, definitely, because I think he's at a point where he's like, I don't have any more fucks to give,
I think that's the best, description of what's going on. And the funny part about it is that it's pretty clear to Danielle that even when she tells him, you're supposed to pass that through me, Ed, and she knows that, he's not going to do it. Like she has to verbally tell him, and, and she knows that he's not going to abide by it. And it is kind of disturbing in a sense. But of course, Julian, I had not suspected that Palmer, one of these other, let's say workers, I don't know whether he's a Helios person or an astronaut, but he does not like what he's seeing with Ed having what I was calling the shakes, or whatever it is. And I remember the last episode, Julian, I did ask you, do you think Danielle knows about this? And you said, no, I don't think she knows. Well, now she knows. And boy, Julian, were you expecting Danielle to just, she explodes towards Ed, 30 years of pent up, keeping it inside, and, tells him she's just really disappointed in him more than anything else. I don't think that she has, dislikes him in any way. She just has this disappointment in him. Does Ed even get it when she blows her lid off?
I don't think so. I don't think he cares. He already has his own, issues about her. I mean, again, despite the camaraderie that was forged from their time together, he still feels superior to her. And I don't think, he may not think that he was behaving that way when he, talks to her sometimes, but she does. She's had to put up with it. And that outburst was definitely, that quirk finally being unleashed of, you know what, I'm your superior and I'm not going to put up with this crap anymore. You don't go around endangering the frickin' mission just because of your ego. We're not playing that game. And she's probably been wanting to say that for a long time, waiting and waiting, because she had to deal with it when they were, when he was in NASA and was her, superior. It just was finally time for her to say something, and that was great. But no, I think his ego is going to continue to, have him, continue to do the stuff that's going to cause some issues, just like he was blind to what Danny was going through and the possibility that Danny could, screw the mission up on their way out there. And once they got there, and he did, he was totally blind to it. So, yeah. It's going to happen again.
Yeah. And Julian, you make such a good point about also comparing the situation to Danny. And of course, as you know, that has been one of my favorite things to talk about with you, about what happened to Danny, because we know something bad happened. We just don't know what that bad thing is. And we got quite a few scenes about what may or may not have happened to him, let's say, or at least what's been witnessed. And to be honest with you, I was quite surprised, and I did like how it was portrayed. And I think it was somewhat more of a realistic scenario, even under this incredibly difficult situation, how Danielle had to deal with someone not being able to take any real action against him. And for the better of the team, I think she did what she did to, let's say, Danny, keeping him away definitely from access to certain things that he could harm himself with. That might have been something that also she considered. But something, Julian, the episode is called Goldilocks, and it does circle around this discovery. of a what I call, it's a rare earth, right? It's a rare metal.
Yeah.
And we know how valuable that is. And we're talking about the mother lode of rare earths, rare metals, and it's destabilizing the market even before it's been harvested, Julian. It certainly is amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. This asteroid that could deliver quite a lot of needed ore, and the heavy metals that they need for their projects. And yes, the possibility that it could destabilize the Soviet, because they're the ones who kind of on Earth have the majority of those ores that they're husbanding and selling out at a great profit for the space program, I'm sure. And this fact that there's this whole race to get out there and be the ones to get in on it, I don't know, man. They failed just to bring that one asteroid in, and now they want to capture this other thing that I don't know. Again, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a disaster. A
Yeah.
disaster.
Yeah, Julian, who would have guessed? And I did like how they showed us, of course, that the nations, the two dominant nations and private industry, all at the same time, as their ears perked up and said, "What? Another asteroid? What?" And like all three of it. Oh my gosh, what? And Dev is all just so excited. He's so excited. He decides that he's going to go to Mars. Gee, I wonder how that's going to affect all the Helios workers having Dev there breathing down their necks. I wonder if the black market thing is going to be disrupted. Julian, this is going to cause all sorts of chaos and craziness. I think this game that Miles and Ilya have been playing is going to be ending soon in a bad way, but it's already in jeopardy with Ilya finding out that Miles, I hope I'm saying the guy's name correctly, or Dale, is actually going ahead and selling these products that Ilya's like, no, you can't do that. It's going to bring attention to us. How do you think Dev's going to respond when he finds out that some of his employees have this market of selling items from Mars, I guess unauthorized or no one knows about? It's certainly not the picture that he has in mind for this, incredible journey to Mars and potentially changing the world with these robotic, his robotic inventions. Is Dev gonna freak out? Is he gonna find out how the conditions are and what it's really like for his Helios workers on Mars?
Well, I hope certainly that he is going to be confronted by the situation. He got overpowered, essentially early on at Helios, and went off and sulked at his compound on the beach, and didn't from this guy who was like, oh, our company is about everybody working together, and there is no hierarchy, blah 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 blah. And that's certainly not what was happening and has been happening on Mars, where there is this class system of workers, and everybody else above them, specialists and astronauts and all that. It's it. I can't believe that a situation like that was allowed to begin, to even start out like that, to become like that. But of course, it was essential for the story. So there it is. That's where it is. But you can see that yes, Dev just kind of like sitting out, not even paying attention to what was going on with the company. And when he finally does come back and assert control, it's all about what he wants to do. So it's all about him again, and he has no idea what's going on with Helios employees out there. And I can't wait to see that rude awakening. I hope that he gets out there and they go on strike or give him the crap or whatever. It's like, no, we ain't doing this, because the fact that they let that situation go like that is partially why they have this black market thing going, because those other employees those Helios employees are being treated like shit. They got, no recourse they have, and they're getting nickel and dimed. They've got to figure out how to make some money, because they're certainly not being able to do what they were sent there to do. So it's going to be a reckoning, I tell you.
Yeah, and you made such a good point, Julian, which I had forgotten about, but I'm glad you mentioned it. Was how the stockholders were not happy with how Dev was running the country. Running the company. Excuse me. He's taken over the company, but he did it, a forceful takeover, right, Julian?
Yeah.
And certainly, most of the stockholders were not happy with the way he ran the company at that moment. So, that might also happen where he'll end up losing favor with the company again. But this lady here, when she finds out that she's been appropriated to the recovery mission on the asteroid, even she has mixed reservations about it. And she was hoping to get this. She talked about how there's going to be overtime, triple time, bonuses, all sorts of cool stuff. Julian, I have this sinking feeling that there isn't going to be overtime, triple time, bonuses, and all that stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know what's going her. I don't know. I mean, there was kind of early on, there was this, kind of hint that she was attracted to Miles, and that she really liked him, and every once in a while, the time he would look at her, and you could see, and he's been away. His wife had him, kind of, they'd separated it somewhat for a while, and so he's missing his wife, and is not sure what's going on with her, because she's off doing, oh, I'm gonna buy this house, and I'm working now because we need the money. And so he's uncertain. He's got his uncertainties with his own domestic situation. So they kind of led you to believe that maybe something, and it could still, but something was going to occur between that. Now there's this new guy up there, and she's spending a bunch of time with him, but I'm not exactly sure where she is suddenly kind of like reticent to be involved with this. Maybe she may be having fears that in this rush to get out there and try and snag this thing, that the same accidents, same disregard for on is going to happen again. And so I think she's dealing with that. That may be it. She's seeing all the signs that, what, this another accident it could be happening. We're going too fast. We don't have the time, the training, it's not, we haven't been training for this. So I think she's worried something bad could happen. And she's right to be worried about it. Yeah.
You make such a good point, Julian. And certainly everybody is wondering this as we see them talk about how they only have a bit of time. There's only so much time to get this done, or else that rock of iridium will be, they won't get it. And therefore they've lost a fortune. And this notion that the next leap of scientific advancement rests on recovering this product from this rock is just remarkable, Julian. I think what is also very interesting about it is the fact that the nations are not in agreement over how it's going to be, distributed. And I just love how the president gets up there. I don't remember this, and I'm sure it did happen for real, but how the president is like, I found
Yeah, yeah.
it is so satisfying to see a politician, kind of completely talk out of their ass and make up stuff and just be proud of it and say, it's because of me that we were able to go to the next phase in scientific discovery, and it feels good. I'm your president, vote for me in 2024. I think it's really funny, or whatever the election year is. It's really funny how he's commandeered this. They even got a David Letterman skit. It was a lot of, top tens from David Letterman through the years. I'm curious, whether if I could have made a top 10 of, what really happened to Danny, whether I could have accomplished that David Letterman style, Julian. But I did like how upset the head of NASA is getting, and how he's like, do you realize what a delicate situation this is? And, and even the Russian space, Irina knows that the president is shooting his mouth off. What is going to happen, Julian? Because now we found out that in order to do these negotiations, people are headed to Russia. What do you think is going to happen? And also, are you surprised? I guess we're not surprised that Alita is heading there as well, representing Helios. And I'm guessing she's going to run into someone who she hasn't seen for quite some time, but clearly thinks about all the time. Are we going to see the reunion between Alita and, of course, Margot?
Oh, I think so. I think they're heading that way. I think that definitely she is going to catch her for some reason, whatever reason. She's going to see her, and it is going to be hell to pay. She's not going to be. Alita is not going to be happy, and is probably going to jeopardize everything. Because of her temper, which still is not in check. She just barely maintains that, temper of hers from time to time. I also, it was funny that, I think, wasn't it with Al Gore, didn't he allude to the fact that he was involved in the invention, the creation of the World Wide Web or something like that? So that was nice how they kind of put a spin on it's like, oh, Gore's gonna gore, and he's gonna do what he's gonna do. There was a Saturday Night Live, I remember, when Gore was running for president, and they were making fun of the debates, and he kept on talking about the lockbox, that we should put all the money into a lockbox. Anyway, yes, so that was funny that they kind of poked at Al Gore that way. But yeah, this has been a hurry up and it's going to happen type thing, because Dev has decided this, that, and the other, and who cares what anybody else thinks, That's a disaster waiting to happen, and now she's going to run. She's going to run. She is going. Yeah, she's going to see Margot, and it's going to hit the fan. It's going to be bad.
It's going to go crazy, and it is really funny because she's also pushing aside her responsibilities. She could have said, "Dev, I'm not doing this," but she accepted the responsibility of representing the negotiations in Russia. And she's brushing off the other people who are really important to the company. And I kind of wish that the shareholders would see her behavior. It's really irresponsible as an executive. I don't care if she's an engineer or not. If you don't want to do it, just say you can't do it, quit the job. But don't, she's holding so many people's futures in her hands, and the company Helios and people who have invested in Helios. It's not cool to kind of, play it so cool and brush it aside like, I'll handle it tomorrow. Do you think when it comes to being an executive, which is what she is, even though she considers herself just an engineer, is Alita being irresponsible?
Irresponsible yeah, she's been, putting off, she's been procrastinating because she's worried about screwing up. So, and she's being thrown into a position she's not comfortable in. So yeah, she's gonna screw up because she's been procrastinating. You know, it's yeah, and that's part of her MO a little bit.
Well,
So
she's not entirely alone, right, Julian? That
yeah,
people in the company are approaching her. They're trying to get her on the ball. They've been getting her these phone calls that she hates. Normally, she's on top of those calls, and whenever they call, you can just feel her cringe. She's like, "Oh no, they're calling and they're telling me I have to do this relation." Is it time that Alita stepped up? Because you and I were both talking about how surprised we were Alita wasn't a mission commander at some point at NASA. Is she going to take that role, let's say, for Helios in a sense? Because Dev is so far into the fantasy of discovery, that he's not quite what I would consider mission commander material. But I think Alita could be somebody like that. What do you think?
she certainly. It seemed like Margot was grooming her for that for the longest time. It seemed like maybe that's where she would be headed, and I think the guy at Danny Stern's character, I can't remember his name, the guy in charge of NASA. I
Yeah.
think when they talked earlier, he even mentioned he's like surprised that she hadn't been further on in her career, and of course we know it's mostly because of her PTSD at what happened to Margot and the explosion, at Johnson Space Center. So it's possible that while it might be very fractious for her to run into Margot, it may serve as kind of a catalyst for her to get her butt in gear and do the things that need to be done. It's possible. It's always possible. Who knows? Depends on how they write it.
Yeah, Julian, I really do like the suspense of this, let's say, reunion that we've been anticipating. We're not quite sure how it was going to play itself out. I really do like the reintroduction of this because, ironically, I don't think Margot has any kind of advantage. Usually there's like a home field advantage or anything like that. But Margot seems to be the one who doesn't have an advantage in this case, even though let's say she's been there and hasn't been, I don't know what the United States would do if they got their hands on her, but will, Margot's recognizable. And I guess if Margot is so far in the forefront of helping the Soviet space program, which she is, we can see her doing that. She was talking about Goldilocks and how many tons of ore, not ore, but let's say iridium was in this meteor, and giving them very specific information. The entire program over there knows who she is. Will Margot even be the person who's going to be talking to everybody, or will she pop and speak to Alita by chance? Because we know there's going to be a confrontation. What do you think, Julian? Will Margot be put in the forefront?
No, I don't think. While she seems to be Irina's right hand man, so right hand person, so to speak, she is. I think Irina's smart enough to realize they can't do that, right? She's not going to blatantly put her out there like that, because she knows that there's lots of stuff that has to. The only thing that would serve would be if there was some sort of maneuvering, negotiating type of stuff that they needed to do that would sacrifice Margot as some sort of a pawn or something like that. Otherwise, I can't see her blatantly putting her out front like that, because she does know. She knows who she is. She knows where she's from. She knows what they kind of owe her. And she knows the kind of, trouble that Margot would be in if she goes back to the U.S. So I don't see her knowingly doing that, but I'm certain that something could happen, a chance meeting in the halls or something like that, that's going to cause some friction. But I don't I don't think that the Russians would knowingly put her out front like that. I think they would try and tell her to probably stay home. Stay home this week or something like that, you know? It's like, don't come into the office. I don't want to see you.
Yeah, and that's such a good point because, clearly there is a lot going on. And even though she is perhaps maybe even the cornerstone of, let's say, the Russian program. Now, I don't know for sure, but it seems like she is very important to the program, even despite her importance. I am concerned that, once again, if they feel that she's not important anymore, how's that really going to play out for Margot? Because Margot's life really is about wanting to work in space and wanting to work with the space program. So, I am really curious about that. But I'm also very curious about the notion, and I'm trying to pull up a picture of this person because I do kind of want to talk about him a little bit. Is Danny, the Danny that we all know, we've been speculating about what happened to him. And certainly this particular episode not only had a few flashbacks involving Danny, but it went so far as to give us 3 very specific scenarios in the flashbacks. I couldn't find pictures of it. I guess nobody's really posted anything or captured any of it, but I did want to mention that it's very interesting because you and I both spoke about this earlier on how Danielle had a question and really felt that Danny was not ready for a lot of the mission responsibilities he was given, throughout the years. And so, of course, that became a point of contention between Danielle and Ed, but it also was a point of contention between Danielle and Danny. And we've seen in previous seasons where she's confronted him and said, we made an exception for you when you had trouble before and have supported you in this. I don't know how much more we can support you in this. And so this conversation that they've had, by the time they're in Mars, by the time this unfortunate situation where Danny has caused the deaths of other astronauts, directly from his errors, it was very difficult to go ahead and defend Danny at this point. And I understand, Danielle had to do something to make sure, as I said, at that point, I felt that Danny might actually hurt himself. We know this does happen in certain situations where people are in service and, they can be in bed and not wake up the next morning. So I think she might have been very concerned about the effect that might have on the morale of people who were staying there for the year until the next group could come by. But what I found really interesting, Julian, was in one of the flashbacks, it looked like Danielle, they were giving Danny food to live off of while he was exiled in, let's say, in the Korean space pod, if you will. And he was very unhappy. Danny was very unhappy. He didn't look himself. He was definitely hurting. And there was even a flashback where it looked like Danielle was taking food that was meant for Danielle and giving it to Danny. Did I see that right, Julian? Was she giving him her food?
She was, and at first, of course, all of them were. They were portioning out their food, and it was obvious that they were starting to look pretty emaciated and gone. They were on low food rations waiting for resupply from Earth, and yet they continued to take food out to him, which, I assume that they all voted on that to continue to do that. But, naturally, we saw that this was a point of friction between Danielle and Ed. And yet, of course, Ed realized what was going on, and he sees that, it's like the last trip out there, essentially. And she's already told Danny before, he's like, please let me come back. And she's like, nope. Sorry, it's my call, but you're out here because you messed up. And so, yeah, and a Bible. Gives him a Bible. So, yeah, once Ed and Danielle go out on that last mission and find Danny, his body in the spacesuit, sitting out propped up on a rock looking at the sun, and it's obvious that he just let his oxygen run out and he died. So Ed's not happy about that, and that kind of served. Now we know what happened with Danny, and we see that there's this one of these. He thinks, part of him blames Danielle for that, although they were all running out of food, so it's like it still could have happened. And a lot of the other astronauts probably would have been heaping lots of recrimination on him. I don't know if he would have been able to stand being there with a bunch of them, who lost their friends, their comrades, their co-workers in the accidents that he caused, and caused, for a lot of the situation that they were in the first place, of being low on, everything and needing help. So I don't think him coming back would have helped either. He was kind of, he did the only thing he could do. Probably would have helped if he'd done it earlier, perhaps. But certainly Ed blames Danielle for that a lot, and that certainly showed. It was kind of a good way to help us understand why he's been, the other reason he's been, so disrespectful to Danielle with her being there and in charge. He doesn't. He's angry at her for her decisions before, and now she's doing stuff that is against him again. So it's just like, she has it out for me. That's probably what Ed's thinking. She's got it out for me. She's trying to take me down or something. She's trying to destroy my, reputation or whatever. So it's a sticky wicket.
It is a sticky wicket, and I just wanted to kind of read a little bit more about this. Obviously, you've said everything that needs to be said, but I think what was interesting was it says here that Danny can't help but reflect on their last mission together on Mars. This is Danielle can't help, because she actually wakes up dreaming about it. And they talk about reminding Danielle of the camaraderie that marked the first few months after Kelly's successful departure by rocket and safe labor and delivery. And certainly you could see them rationing out their food, maintaining decent morale. Lee was practicing English and the Korean together, trying to get him to kind of get accustomed to being around the other astronauts. And, I think it was very interesting because everybody was also in this state of deprivation, as you mentioned, Julian. But here it says it's unclear exactly what happened, but the strong implication is he allowed himself to die of oxygen deprivation. But each flashback scene ratchets up the anxiety and feelings of impending doom. This is not my writing. I'm reading it from something we know from Avery's birthday party that Danny is not around. And it's clear from Danny and Ed's argument last week that it's not because he's in prison. The dramaturgical inevitability of Danny's death does nothing to soften its impact. This is the former bright-eyed, ambitious young Annapolis midshipman, which is the picture I have of him there, the eldest child of moon heroes Gordo and Tracy Stevens, the astronaut who saved so many lives himself in the Polaris Space Hotel disaster. I think that was in the beginning of season 2 or 3. And his life was over even before he turned 35. And that was written by Sophie Brookover, who's a writer for Vulture. So I did just want to give Sophie Brookover the credit for those words. But that is kind of how I think was very interesting. We were presented, Danny as this, person who had the brightest future ahead of him. And things did get out of hand. And it is quite a sad story of an individual in the program who was not able to, kind of have the success that he could have had. And there was that disappointment. And I think Danielle is not responsible for this, but she does feel, I think, some responsibility for it in a sense. Maybe she felt when his mother and father passed away, kind of taking him under her wing. But it didn't happen that way, Julian. And certainly she gave him every opportunity to go as far as he could. But it is sad. And my mystery question has been answered, Julian, but it doesn't feel quite the way that I hoped I would feel after finding out the answer. In fact, it feels very disappointing. And certainly we knew that Danny was not going to like turn himself around on Mars, but I thought at least if he'd made it to Earth and, he could kind of start over again, which I don't think he could, but it would have been very interesting if they had written him that way. But unfortunately, unlike his parents, he has a tragic ending, along with somewhat of a tragic ending of his brother as well. These poor children of Gordo Stevens. It's really very sad situation, and I think that they handled the character right. They handled the situation with the brother right. It's too bad that these two boys really just couldn't seem to recover, honestly, from the loss of their parents and the pressures. At least that's what I'm saying. It probably is the pressures of what's expected, because it's being an astronaut in the types of conditions and scenarios we saw here are not easy. But I do honestly, I wanted to know very badly, Julian, what happened to him, and seeing him sit there with the oxygen run out with, just deceased. It was tough. It was tough. I didn't almost want the answer yet. Could they have pulled it out any longer? Could they have extended this any longer, Julian, or was this the right time?
I think they did it the right way. It was kind of, I was watching it and I was thinking of you, because I knew you're like, what happened to Danny? What happened to Danny? And I was like, we're going to find out. We're going to find out. But at the same time, it was kind of funny because I was doing some other things too while I was watching. And for a minute, I was like, I had to check again and see, is this a flashback? What's going on here? Because I wondered, for a moment, if it was happening. It was like, what? Are we going out to see how he is now? And then we find out it's a flashback, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, I got it. All right. And yes, it ties in beautifully with the tensions that are brewing between Danielle and Ed, and just it's that final kick. It makes me wonder, does his brother know? Does his younger brother know exactly what happened?
Yeah, it makes me wonder too. And I guess might even be the last time that we hear about Danny when it comes to this series. Despite his accomplishments, his brother, I think he has a reduced sentence, although I can't remember, Julian, the exact specifics as to whether or not he's still incarcerated. But they took into account the fact that his brother was manipulated by that cult group that took so much advantage of him at a time when he was incredibly vulnerable. His brother, what is his brother's name? I can't remember. He was so vulnerable at that time to fall victim to this horrible attack on the headquarters there for the space program. But I hope he finds out what happened to his brother. He probably does know. And, it is very tragic to lose anybody this way. But, things like this, I guess, do happen. There have been deaths, Julian, his death either by purposeful means or by accident or negligence. People have died going on these missions. So, if we look at all of the deaths, which I think are a lot, I don't think that this space travel is routine when they push many of these missions in when it comes to danger. So I think we've seen a lot of scenarios where that's the case. And certainly, Kelly deciding that she's going to bring her son with her to Mars is one thing, but it is interesting to look at Dev, who we also see has some things that he wanted to deal with before he went to Mars. he went to go see his mama. You know, it's like, before you leave the planet, you make sure you better go see your mama. You know, it's kind of, this thing where if you're in town, if you go to your hometown and your mom's there, before you leave, you have to go and say hello to your mother. So that's kind of a golden rule. And he does this. We see Dev visit his mother, and it is a very interesting reunion. There's tension between the two of them. And certainly Dev is of course, we find out a little bit more about his father. I didn't actually know more about Dev's father, but it's clear that he is not an ordinary man and that he's a genius. And, his father also was clearly a genius. And he, comes from a family of, incredibly successful entrepreneurs. And Dev is a fascinating person. Not surprised that he's done so well. He could probably take over the universe if he wanted to, but he's a dreamer. So he has these other things that are important to him. And as I said before, sometimes it means that he's up in the clouds about a lot of his decision-making process. However, Dev is great. Like, the actor who plays him in this character, it's fun to watch Dev. And it was very interesting seeing him talk to his mother. And it was a heartfelt conversation where the mother almost feels like she has to explain herself as why, she had to leave the father. Like, it was a very interesting situation. There's tension. It doesn't seem like they have a lot of conversations. He pulls up to, I could show this image. He pulls up to, what looks like a community center in what is like, $100,000 car, Julian?
Yeah.
It's like, and I kind of laughed at it. It's like, yeah, let me show up to the soup kitchen in my Lamborghini. It's it was almost, like was he thinking about this? Was this something that he was in denial about it? What is going through Dev's mind when he pulls up to a place clearly where it's like a community center or something, and this, not wearing the right clothing for the right, event? What's going on with Dev? Is he having a crisis because he's going to Mars? What did this conversation with his mother really mean to him, and why did he have it now?
Yeah, maybe he feels he's not coming back. And so he did want to say his goodbyes, but certainly, I mean, there was a bit of the conversation where it was like, you don't have to go. Why are you going? I think there was a bit of the conversation of you could be doing stuff here. If not directly, the subtext that of all the things he's doing, he could be doing more. And we can see in a shot like this, that the disparity that is there, and we're getting, we constantly are getting these undercurrents of economic disparity and issues happening in the U.S. as a part of this energy, revolution that has happened, where there may be cheaper energy, but an awful lot of people are, now not working because no thought was given to switching over the infrastructure of a planet that was used to working with coal and petroleum products, and it's like, well, why don't they? It's the same thing that we have here. Why do we have so many people who are, not benefiting from changes that are supposed to benefit everybody? And so he certainly is still, he's not quite, he's not the guy he's thinking about himself and what kind of a name he can make for himself. He's not thinking about all of mankind. He's not thinking about other than, if I do something that, makes everybody love me type of a thing, perhaps. Maybe that's his goal has always been to try and be the best and do something.
Well, Darth Vader, you grabbed my attention with this one. Darth Vader, I love it. Yeah, he's like, what happened to my hubcaps? I also want to mention Scott Bartholomew, who's had a lot of very interesting comments as well. The juxtaposition between Dev confronting his mother and Ed's daughter requesting that her son join her on the mission was powerful. What did you think, Julian?
It was not the choice. I did not expect that. Because again, I know how dangerous space is. Now, I understand her need to realize I need to be with my son. I did not realize that she was going to say, okay, I'll bring him with me. And I'm like, oh my God, what kind of terrible thing is going to happen now? Right? So either it works out or it doesn't, but it seems almost selfish, actually, in a way, to do that. I'm going to bring you into harm's way. And again, this is what I was talking about at the beginning. They are trying to create this feeling that space travel has become so easy because, oh, what? Because you have an energy source that makes it easier to get around does not mean that space is any less dangerous. Because, you know, we all know space wants to kill us. But space does not care if you had a good day or a bad day. If you screw up, you're going to die, most likely. And that's that. And for them to continue to pretend like they're just hopping on a boat and going across to another continent to do stuff, it's not the same. It's just not the same. So, yeah, yeah.
And we can see that Dev's perception, as I said, and I am, you know, of course, saying it again, the fact that he shows up to, you know, an ordinary event in $100,000 vehicle, you know, because that's just what he had laying around, right? That's how he approaches things. He does not understand what his mother is saying to him when she says, I didn't need your father's money or anything like that. A lot of what she's saying to him has gone completely over his head. But that, as Scott pointed out, when Kelly goes in to talk to him, his back is to Kelly, and we can see Dev is crying. And, you know, I almost got the impression, and I don't know whether this is the case, but Dev feels like his mother abandoned him. Now, I don't know whether that's true, Julian. I have no idea if that's what happened between him and his mother. But does Dev feel like he's been abandoned by his mother?
It's kind of that's the feeling I kind of get is, yeah. And it's possible that, you know, yes, he's had this gifted intellect, and apparently so have his parents, but he, you know, he may have learned to be intelligent, but he didn't learn any emotional intelligence from his parents, certainly. He has no emotional intelligence, and perhaps he's feeling that, you know. He's realizing that emptiness that he's been trying to fill up with, you know, being the rich guy and trying to be the smart guy. That's what he's been doing his whole life, to try and fill that emotional emptiness that he's had from, you know, the way he feels, you know, that his parents treated him when he was young. So he's like, hey, I've made it. And that shows in the way that he just casually drives up in his sports car, you know, into this place. Is like his whole life has been, I earned this. I worked hard for this. I don't care what you think. I worked hard for this. And you work hard and you could get here too.
That's right, because everybody should be able to go to Mars, Julian. As Dev said in an earlier episode, I think everyone should have the right to go to Mars if they want to. You know, And it does feel quite, it does sound like what you hear a lot of people say. Unfortunately, for individuals who don't have advantages, well, they could work harder and get access to that. But we all know, especially from what we saw in the, as you mentioned already, Julian, and we saw it in the beginning of the episode where they had said, you remember what happened in the last boom when they discovered helium-3. There was, I think the three things they said was that there was a problem with the economy. There was people lost their jobs, and one other thing. Oh, and terrorism. And I thought to myself, well, we have that now anyway. So, like, you don't have to have like a discovery to get that, because we already have that now. So this, apparently it was just the normal progression of things. But I think it was very interesting how cynical people were towards this. They're not happy about it. And I would even go so far as to say, Julian, that maybe even the majority of the planet is not happy with this space program. Is there another whole side that they've hinted at where people just don't like this at all? I mean, the sensationalism of the story is interesting, but for the most part, adults like Miles, like a number of different people, are really still very unhappy with this and would be quite happy if it stopped.
Yeah, it feels like that. And we get these little snippets when we see new stuff where there's the detractors, the other parties saying, oh, another mess up. Why aren't they working on this stuff? They're more concerned with the space program than they are with things, the economy back home, that kind of stuff. So we're hearing those things happening, those rumblings in the background, and it's who knows what we're going to see if it continues and people aren't paying attention to, again, like Dev, his goals are for him. And he can say, oh, this is for, I think all mankind should be able to go out in space and do this, that, and the other. But he's not doing anything to help out the inequality that's happening on the earth. And he's like, his whole thing in those earlier episodes where it's like, this is my land, stay off. It was just, it's ridiculous. So yeah,
it is ridiculous. And Scott, thank you again for these comments about being abandoned by both parents and taking the side of the father. We are seeing certain behaviors in Dev. I hope that Dev will not be the person who, as I said to you before, Julian, will be the mission commander where he has to make decisions. We've seen decisions that he's made before, and none of us have been happy with what he's done. It's not anything that I think Dev can learn from or be taught. As far as Dev is concerned, he's done nothing wrong, and he's quite out of touch with people who are commanding these missions. As I've said before, and we've kind of seen this, it is really interesting to think about this going forward. And I am very fearful for everyone, because as much as I do like this Dev character, I love this character. I think this is one of the best characters in the show. I'm afraid for them once he starts to get in there and take control of things. I think Darth Plato had said he thinks there's going to be a coup in Happy Valley. I'm actually more afraid of something else. And I'm not quite sure what it is yet, Julian. What should I be afraid of once Dev puts his foot down and does the touchdown on Mars?
Well, he's interested in doing the robotics thing, as far as using robotics heavily to do mining and looking for the ores, and while he thinks it might be better in the long run, it's like, oh, why should men have to worry about, being in danger? This would be better because we can do it without, human lives. But then they've created this situation. First, Helios comes in and, like you said, so here's this new power system, that we don't have to use fossil fuels. and puts a whole bunch of, the upends the economy because people don't have work and have to try and take cheaper jobs. Then, they're like, oh, well, we'll go out to the moon or we'll go out to Mars and we'll try and make our money there. And then they get shafted because, it's capitalism and they're trying to do it as cheaply as they can. And then their, boss essentially says, I'm going to put you out of work because I'm going to bring robots and put them in and do your jobs instead. It's like, I wouldn't be happy at all if I was his employees. We might see a little workers' revolution going on when he gets out there. I kind of hope we do.
And I just put a and of course Darth Plato is the one who thinks there might be a coup, as I mentioned before. Eddie Gathega plays Dev Ayesa. And as I said before, I just think he's doing such a brilliant job with this character. I think he almost feels a little hypnotic when you see him on the screen. This is the actor not in the role, but when you see Dev, he almost looks a little hypnotic on the screen, like, and I hate to say this, but like some of those cult leaders where they would kind of, do these big projections of themselves and you would see them and it looks like they're looking in another world. And what's ironic is that he is going to another world. So this only perpetuates or, kind of makes his appearance and existence seem to span across space and time in reality. And, obviously if he's able to do these incredible things, it's going to influence a lot of people. But I also think that he might be the one who makes even more money. And what I suspect is that it's not going to be America or Russia that's going to get the money. It's going to be Dev who's going to do something that's going to prevent the United States and Russia from going in there. That's what I think is going to happen. Now, I know that's very speculative. I'm just speculating. Scott says Dev is emotionally stunted because of his upbringing. And certainly we have noticed that he does kind of lack a lot of things there. But certainly throwing Dev into the mix with this caste system that Scott has mentioned is going to be very interesting. We're not going to get an upstairs, downstairs, Julian. I would have loved an upstairs, downstairs on Mars. I think that might be the new version that we could see from PBS or perhaps the BBC. But if we're not going to get that, we're going to get Dev there. Thank you very much, Darth Plato. Yes, he is going there because he wants it. And I think that Dev, knowing his personality, might find himself overreaching to a point where it will cost lives, as you said, Julian, and a lot more than what we bargained for. It might put us to a brink of war over what he might do and the position he might put so many of the people there in. Now, is Ed going to go home? Is Ed being sent home, or will something happen that will keep Ed on the station, Julian? This is my final question to you.
Ed's going to do whatever he can to stay on the station.
So he's going to hide downstairs on the 4th level. They're going to find Ed down there with the Korean man's wife. It's going to be... Is that what's going to happen? She's going to be down there.
They couldn't even get her out of the country yet. So she's not even on her way. So yeah, that's the other thing. The black market there, they're trying to hide the fact from the Koreans and from Lee that they can't get his wife up there. And so that's gonna blow things apart. And he didn't do it yet, but he's going to confront, our boy about his sending those rocks home. And
yes, Ilya will say something.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit more on that 4th level, don't you think, Julian? What's down there? What is down there?
Nothing. I don't know. I don't think there's anything down there that is going to play any big, story. Yeah, I don't think so. I think
Miles will be a hero but it's going to cost them $100,000. He's going to do something that's going to be quite heroic, and he's going to owe Helios a bunch of money, and all that rock money. He's going to have to sell the house and sell the college funds for the kids, and give it back to Helios, or risk going in jail. I think that's because that's what they alluded to. He's going to be somehow involved in sending somebody home. Maybe it'll be Lee. Maybe Lee will go home, and there'll be this open window for him to go home, sneak home. They won't know he's off the station. Who knows? I think it's very interesting to think of how, as you said, this giant chessboard, or maybe a backgammon board, of what's going on with everybody. But remember, it was Ed who said, we can bring her down to the 4th level and no one will know where she is. So that's certainly something that he's considered. Maybe another pod somewhere. I think it is very funny, Julian, that I'm even suggesting that this is something someone would do.
I don't put any credence in what Ed said about that, because that's ridiculous. To say, oh, nobody will know that she's down there, because it's like, okay, so she didn't leave the station, so where the F is she, right? It's like, she's somewhere here. It's like, just because you can't find her now doesn't mean she's not here. So it's because they would know when she was taken by shuttle up to the rocket. So that's kind of ridiculous, but he was just being desperate. But I do believe that, well, no, what I want to, they have not, I have missed, if they explained it, I didn't catch why it's bad to send those rocks back to Earth.
Well, clearly they're high in radioactivity or some contaminant or contagion. There's got to be a downside.
Yeah, but they haven't said it. They haven't said so. They haven't said so. And nobody's, I mean, they're selling these things. They're putting ads in the frickin' paper. It's like surely somebody, NASA, somebody, Roscosmos, are they actually just going, oh, well, that's interesting. Somebody's bringing rocks down. But they haven't actually said that they can't do that. It's against, nobody has said that they can't do that.
And I think, Julian, it's interesting.
It's just, Scott, it's just been this thing. It's like, oh, don't do that because it would be dangerous. Yeah, I just don't understand why it hasn't been made clear, other than his partner saying, oh, we'd be sticking our necks out. But why is it so dangerous for them to send those rocks back to Earth? They haven't stated why that would be a bad thing. Naturally, of course, it's understood that coming back, or that sending stuff out to Mars, you have to pay for, you're paying for weight. And so you want to make sure you know exactly what you're shipping out there. And obviously people are cooking the books so that they can, send out this stuff that is not supposed to be up there. But as far as sending stuff back, I don't, what else are they sending back? What are they sending back from Mars to Earth? So why does it matter that they're sending rocks?
We are going to see how that plays out. And Scott mentions that Ed's time up there is divorcing him from reality. We have Dev, who is not connected to any real reality also, and he's going to be joining the mix. Ed doesn't want to go back to Earth and spend time with his family. The mission has become his new family. Dev doesn't want to stay on Earth. He wants to go to this new place, Mars. He thinks that there's something magical is going to happen to him when he gets there. It is a very interesting motivation for some of the people who want to go to Mars. So my last question, will Kelly find this microbial life, or whatever it is that she's been so desperate to find?
And not till next season. There's too many other things going on. Too many other things. Or maybe it'll be in the asteroid that they capture, along with the iridium, or whatever.
And by pulling out the iridium, it'll destroy the life form. It can only survive in an iridium core, right? It's a new life form. It can only survive in an iridium core. By destroying it, you're destroying the one life we've discovered in the universe. Okay. I'm sorry. That's my prediction, guys. That was Kelly right there. And of course, that organism will be the secret to helping her son have a normal life on Earth. There'll be some other caveat too, but we shall see. Julian, it's been such a pleasure talking about this incredible episode 5 of For All Mankind in season 4, where you're right, I found out what happened to Danny, but it was not a satisfying find, but I have to give them credit for excellent writing, keeping me on my toes to the very last minute, and seeing his face was so tragic. Just so well done to this writing team and everybody who's involved in the show. So happy that we are having such a great season so far. Julian, final words on the episode that you would like to share with everyone.
Well, I was a little disappointed. I had hoped that maybe he would be out there making, a better life or doing something, working, to make Danny would be making things better, but that didn't happen. And, it happened, I guess, the way it was supposed to. And I'm a little, despite the fact that Kelly says her son would probably benefit from the wait lists and the going out there, that it would be easier on his heart and all that, and which is interesting to note. I mean, that is the one caveat that is like, oh well, maybe it is better that she take him. That maybe he is the star child. He's the space baby, and perhaps he is the beginning of a new generation of children that are going to be raised off of Earth's gravity, So
he's going to be like a Belta from The Expanse.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad we got another 5 episodes to go, so that's wonderful, and I can't wait to spend time discussing them with you every week.
Same here, Julian. Julian, where can people find you?
They can find me on the Burnettwork. They can find me right here on Positive Fandom Network with you. And they can find me on Facebook and Instagram. And that's about it.
Guys, I do want to thank you all for being here tonight, Julian especially. And I also want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson, who says thank you for watching and joining us. Join us next week for episode 6. Tom Jr. Jackson, we are all goof people. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to Tom Jr. Jackson's YouTube channel, which is in here. And I'm going to find it, Tom. I think it's here. But if it's not in here, please do. Yeah, here it is. Like and subscribe to Tom Jr. Jackson's YouTube channel. Please support the creators out here. Also like and subscribe to Positive Fandom, which is my YouTube channel, as well as the Burnettwork. Guys, tomorrow is the member only call for as little as 99 cents a month. You can become a member of the Burnettwork and join in the member only call, which takes place usually twice a month, or at least once a month around that. So do consider becoming a member of the Burnettwork. And of course, guys, what was this? Let's see. Yes. There was something else I wanted to mention and I can't remember it, but thank you everybody who mentioned, oh yes, this is what it was. Darth Plato says it's a Total Recall prequel. Yes. Absolutely. Guys, thank you everybody for everything. And of course, my favorite line, and I'm not ever going to forget this line, Darth Plato, because it was just too funny and too appropriate. I was going to call this episode Rare Earths. They are calling it Goldilocks. I almost want to call it What Happens in My Hubcaps episode for all mankind. So thank you, everybody, for contributing in the chat, which you always do anyway, and for enjoying this episode along with us. Yes, the member call is tomorrow, guys. Do look at the community tab on the Burnettwork and join in. Yes, musings this tomorrow, hopefully. We'll see how it turns out. If everybody's free to do it, we will do it. And certainly look forward to seeing all of you there. On behalf of the Burnettwork, everybody, and Positive Fandom, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight, guys. And remember, guys, no matter where you are in the galaxy, always remember to please be kind. Take care, everybody.
Cheers.